Hi, folks. Steve Urban here, founder and CEO at recruiting and consulting firm Riderflex. If you think today's tip or guest interview can help someone you know, please share this with them. And if you enjoy listening to our show, please subscribe to our channel and hit the like button on the episodes. Finally, aside from our podcast, our day job here at Riderflex is to provide recruiting, staffing, and consulting services. You can visit riderflex.com to learn more about us and get the information on the services we provide. And now, a quick word from our sponsor and friends at Marketing 360.
Try the #1 marketing platform for small business. Everything you need from design to marketing to CRM. Learn more at marketing360.com. Marketing 360. Fuel your brand.
All right, Ryan Bourne on the Riderflex podcast. I like that mic. What is that? What's going on with that mic? What is that? Is that buffer? What is that? Is that?
You see, all my friends give me a hard time about it. They think it's an animal, but no, it's a mic. It's a dual purpose mic, so I use it for my DSLR if I'm filming videos, and can also use it for podcasts and recordings. But it's a Rode mic.
It is. Okay, so can I ask you a question on that? So I got a Rode mic now. Do I have to have something extra? Do I have to have like I don't know, like a box or something along with my laptop? Because I bought this mic, this expensive mic, not the one I'm using now. I bought this other one, and I just just tried to plug in the USB. I thought it'd be nice and simple, but that didn't work.
Yeah, I think it depends on each mic. So for this one, I have to use a splitter that splits out and creates like a dual audio channel. So it goes into the audio jack, the 3.5 millimeter, but then it has a splitter, so it splits between audio out versus audio in. And then you can configure if you want like external speakers or if you want to use your computer speakers, but it won't work without that. If you just plug the mic directly in the computer, it's not going to work.
Okay, maybe we can talk offline later. You can help me with that, or send me a link to what you purchased, because
Sounds good.
I mean, the mic I have is decent, but I would like a better one. Yours sounds fantastic, by the way. Sounds really
That's good to hear. Yeah. Cool.
So you're in Boulder today, and you've lived in Boulder for how long now?
It's been about a year and a half. We went through an accelerator program back in 2019, so I was out here for a few months, and that's really what introduced me to Boulder, and then moved back out here full time in May of 2020.
May of 2020 is when you moved?
Yeah, good time to move, right? Although I was in San Francisco prior to that, and it was a good time to get out of the city and into more of the suburbs and, be in kind of nature more so.
Right. Where'd you grow up? Santa Barbara, California? Where are you from?
I'm from California. Yeah. So I grew up in Orange County and then went to college in Santa Barbara. So I slowly started making my way up the coast. And then after graduation, moved up to San Francisco for work.
Okay. What'd your folks do?
My parents are both entrepreneurial. So my dad, I think that's where I got the bug initially. So my dad has always owned his own businesses, either because he can't work for someone else because he doesn't like having a boss, or, he saw a bigger opportunity. I'm not entirely sure which one it is. I think it's probably the former, but he initially, started a pool cleaning business when he was in his 20s and saw that through for a while, ended up selling it and started a residential and commercial painting business where he just paints homes and commercial buildings, and he's been doing that for, I don't know, 30 some years at this point.
Wow. How old is he?
He is in his early 60s.
Early 60s. Now, is he still doing the work, or is he just managing and pointing and delegating?
He's been managing, pointing, and delegating for quite a while now. So yeah,
okay.
He owns the business, but he's not actually painting.
Yeah, if you're in your 60s, your body as a painter in your 60s, I'm guessing that would be hard.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and also the respiratory issues. You don't really think about it, but you're breathing in a lot of paint, and when you do that over 30 years, it starts to cause some issues. So that's another tough thing that most folks don't think about.
What'd your mom do?
My mom is a real estate agent, so she's actually a broker and owns her own practice in Orange County.
Okay. All right. Very good. Any siblings?
I have one brother who's older, 3 years older. So, he beat up on me all the time growing up, which is always fun.
Probably shaped you a little bit, though, in certain different ways, right?
It did. It made me tougher.
Made you tougher, right? What's he do?
He works at a company called Cello, where he's a software engineer, and Cello is a blockchain company. So his whole interest and really what he spends his time focused on is blockchain, NFT, emerging technologies. Um, yeah, that's kind of what he's been doing for the past, gosh, it's got to be at least 5 years, or really when like blockchain started becoming an emerging technology before you even hit the mainstream. That's what he's been focused on.
And interesting, your mom was in real estate, which is in a large degree sales. Your dad was an entrepreneur. Well, I guess your mom's an entrepreneur too, right? If she has a brokerage.
Mm-hmm.
Your dad was a skilled worker that turned it into a business, but neither one of them were writing code or anything, right? And you and your brother both of you and your brother end up being software engineers. Interesting. How'd that happen? Were you guys? Was your dad like, hey, just get into computers? Were you just into it when you were young? How'd that happen for both of you guys, considering what your parents did?
I would say it's the opposite. I think both of us had an aversion to what our parents were doing just because we saw it as hard work, right? Like
Okay.
it was really hard work doing what they were doing. They didn't have healthcare benefits. There's just a lot of things that you don't typically get if you're a small business owner, if you're an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a bit of an aversion to it. And we were both like, no, like, let's go to college, let's get degrees, let's go work at large companies that are nice and cushy. And I think for me personally, I got bored pretty quickly, and I was like, no, this isn't for me. I do want to go the entrepreneur route, and like I see that it's possible because my parents have done it, and that's how I ended up going down that way. I mean, another thing to note too is like when we were growing up, computers were starting to come into homes, right? Like that was a big kind of shift in personal living, and my brother and I just played a lot of computer games growing up. And he's actually the one that convinced me to get into computer engineering, because he was like, hey, those computer games that we used to play? Like, that's what computer engineering is. You just like build video games. And I was like, wow, that sounds awesome. Like, why am I not doing that? Of course, that's like not at all what it is, right? Like, it's such a small percentage of the market of the industry is building computer games, but that's what sold me. And so I was like, okay, like I'm gonna go get a degree in computer engineering so I can build computer games.
Did your dad take you with when you were young, like 15, 16, 17? Did you go to some work sites with your dad and you're like busting ass all day painting and you're thinking to yourself, I don't want to do this for a living?
Oh, totally. Yeah. Yeah. Cause I tried to get a job at 15, just working for someone else. And it was really difficult to even get interviews. Like even at like normal retail stores like Kohl's or like TJ Maxx. Like I ended up working at TJ Maxx when I turned 18. So I finally got a job there.
Gotcha.
But I was like trying when I was 15 and they wouldn't give me an interview. And so my dad's like, hey, like come work on the site with me if you want, and I'll pay you, decent money. But it was hard work. Yeah. I was like, I built a lot of respect for skilled workers at that point.
Isn't it interesting? I bet you had some moments there when you're 16, because when you're 15, 16, you're also most teenagers are going through the stage where they're like, I know more than my parents, or there's a little bit of rebellious stage, right? First couple of times you spent 10 hours painting houses, you probably went home thinking, damn, my dad's actually a lot tougher than I thought.
Oh, totally. Yeah, it's humbling. And also seeing him like in his environment, with his team that he's hired and managing them, built up a lot of respect.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Okay. Very good. So that shaped you in a lot of ways for your entrepreneurial spirit. You tried working for some bigger companies. So you come out of, by the way, why Santa Barbara? I'm just curious. Any particular reason why you went to that school? Is that where your brother went to, by the way?
No, my brother went to San Diego. Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Orange County, so I'd go to the beach a lot. And so I knew I wanted to be somewhere coastal. It was honestly either coastal or somewhere near the mountains because I really enjoyed snowboarding growing up. But
Okay.
paying out of state tuition in Colorado was going to be too expensive and we couldn't afford it. So it really limited the options. So I was like, all right, like I'm going to apply to San Diego and I'll apply to Santa Barbara and then a couple other schools, and ended up choosing Santa Barbara.
Oh, so you visited CU? You thought about CU?
Well, CU is out of our price range. There's no way. Like we already knew before even visiting that it wasn't an option. So I visited Colorado Springs, which was a bit more affordable.
Okay.
And like realized that Colorado, like the springs are pretty far from the mountains. Like it's not really going to be that much closer than where I'm living in Orange County. So maybe that's not the right choice. And it was still like fairly expensive without a state tuition.
Your folks still in California, Orange County?
They are. Yep. I'm trying to convince them to move, but they're still there.
Really? Yeah, right. I mean, at least if you read the news, there's this mass exodus, but I don't know if that's all hyped up in the news or not. I don't know if that's real, but anyway, Okay, so you come out of school, but by the way, so you graduated in 2014, so 6, 7, what are you, 28, 29? Where are you at in there?
29. I still got one more good year in me.
All right, 29. You married, kids, anything like that yet?
No, not yet. I'm engaged. We're getting married
Oh,
next August.
oh, you're engaged. All right, so a date is set.
Yep, date is set.
Uh,
Post COVID, we had to wait until COVID cleared. So yeah, we're doing it next August of 2022.
Tell me about this. How long you been with this? Is your fiance, is she from here, and how long you been with her?
She is from California, so she grew up in Northern California and met her back in college. So we've been together for 9 years now, eight or
What?
9 years.
Wow. Okay, you've dated for 9 years. Was there ever any like, okay, we're gonna break up for a year and then you got back together? Any of that?
No, we were together the whole time. Although it was tough doing long distance because we started dating in college and I was going to school in Santa Barbara and she went to Berkeley. And so that's a decent distance between us.
Now you've been engaged for what'd you say? A year? How long? What, like
Less than that, about 6 months, 7 months.
6 months? 6 months. Did you ask her like after you closed the seed round?
It's about a year after the seed round. That was more for her parents more than it was for her, making sure that we're stable and secure.
Yeah, right. Okay. All right. Very good. Okay. Does she like Colorado?
She does. Yeah. I think it was tough moving right in the middle of the pandemic just because we don't know a ton of people out here. And it's really hard to meet other folks, during a pandemic when no one wants to actually meet in person.
Right.
So that was the hard part initially, but we've started to build out a larger friend group. And I think it's been really enjoyable for her now that we have friends and everything's open up again and, nature is so close by here.
Very cool. All right. What's she do?
She works at a startup as well. So she works at like a Series B startup that's in the health tech space.
Health tech. What's her function?
She is on the sales team, again, sales enablement, managing a team of, I think, 4 or 5 folks.
What did you say? Hey, come do sales for us. I mean, one of your first hires was sales. Were you like, hey, come on, what's up? Come help me sell this stuff.
She's doing enterprise, so it's very different. Like we are SMB, high volume, high velocity, low RPU. She's doing low volume, low velocity, very high RPU. So like her average deals, in the millions per year, which is very different than what we're doing.
Wow. So when she closes a deal, it's millions of dollars.
Oh, it's a big deal. Yeah. Like they're only closing a handful of deals per year, but every time they close a deal, it's a very large deal for them.
Big thing. Okay. All right, cool. So, all right. So let's go back just a little bit before you move. So you get out of college, well, looks like you worked for Clutch Mobile, CIO Technologies. You're kind of moving along. You're like, okay, yeah, this is cool, but what happens? Did you have your co-founder? Was that a buddy in college? And then as you guys are working, you're talking to each other over beers, saying, "Let's start our own thing." Talk to me about how it happened.
Yeah, so it wasn't that deliberate. It was a bit of a more windy road, but essentially, after graduating college, I went and worked at this startup called Mojave Networks, which is the same as Clutch Mobile. Essentially, we had to rebrand because of a trademark issue.
Okay.
I was working at Mojave Networks. About 6 months into being there full time, we got acquired by a company called Sophos, which is based out of the UK. They're about 2,500 employees. We were, I think, like 14-ish at the time at Mojave Networks, so very small. We'd only raised a seed round. So we went through the acquisition process. Then the next couple of years, we're really focused on integration of how do we integrate our existing product into Sophos's product suite.
Okay.
And about at that 2-year mark, Sophos went public. So it got us.
Did you have equity in that? Did you have any? No.
Nothing substantial. I mean, we did get. It was mostly a cash deal, the acquisition. Okay. So I got cash like at the time that we got acquired, but a little bit of equity, really nothing that was substantial though.
Okay.
But what we did get was retention bonuses. So Sophos gave every employee at Mojave retention, like 1 year and 2 year retention bonuses to keep folks around.
Okay.
But naturally what happened was after the 2 years, all of our leadership team left, right? Because they cashed out. They got all the money they could ever get from the deal. Obviously they're still getting paid, but they're like, nope, like on to the next thing. Like we don't want to work at large companies. We're startup people, and they went and started another company, which was definitely beneficial for me because now pretty much everyone that was in leadership and mid-level management left. And so, I was like, hey, I'm ready for more responsibility. I want to manage the engineering team. Like, put me in.
You're over here like, hey, I'm over here. Okay,
Yep.
very good.
So then, like I got the responsibility of managing a few other engineers and like got to build up that kind of leadership experience, which I think is really hard to do at that age, right? Like I was 23 at the time, I want to say 24.
Wow.
Managing engineers and like getting this visibility into this public company. But then about 6 months later, they ultimately decided that they were going to move our product to a different office that was well established. It was a much larger office. We were still like a very small satellite office. We never fully integrated into another office.
Okay.
And so actually the day after, I guess I take a step back. I was building like all these websites and like side projects on nights and weekends. I always
you mean as like a consultant you were doing little side cash gigs, or like for fun or for friends?
No, just for fun, just for myself.
Okay.
It was like my own problems I was trying to solve. So like one example was I was starting to get into like stocks and investing, and I was like, hey, like why isn't there a way to know when a company's about to go public? Because that's how you can make decent money, is if you get in early on an IPO. And so I built this service that would notify you about IPOs, and you could like subscribe to specific industries, you could subscribe to specific companies, and then it would email you saying like, hey, like these are the 3 companies that are going public this week, and like here's how you get into the deal.
Great.
And so it was like super fun, like built that project, and that was just one. I built a handful of different projects kind of.
Did you sell it?
No, it's still just sitting there somewhere. Didn't really do anything with it.
Wow. Okay. All right. Well, I mean, that sounds like that's right. You could have done something with that. I guess that's a different podcast, but all right. So you're doing this stuff on the side.
Yeah. And like really just for fun. And so I built this website for cloud campaigns. I was like, oh, like social media marketing it's kind of dead. Like it needs to be revamped. There needs to be someone to like come in and really rethink how social media management works. Okay. And so I built the website. Literally the next day, HR, like global HR, comes into our office and they're like, hey, thanks for integrating the product. It's been a fun ride. Like we're shutting down the entire office, and all of you have 2.5 months to decide like if you want to come and work for us still. You're gonna have to move to British Columbia and work out of our Vancouver office. Otherwise, like here's a retention bonus, or not retention. Here's a severance package, and thanks for all the hard work. Good knowing you, type thing.
Wow. All right. So you took that cash. You took the severance.
Yep.
All right. And then what? You called your buddy over some beers and said, let's use this cash to start something. No, I don't know. What happened next?
So what happened next was, because I had built all those side projects over the past year or so, I had a really good indication that Cloud Campaign was going to take off. Like it was a good opportunity because the general public just responded to it a lot different than any other side project. Like that IPO side project that I built, I was like, oh, this is a great idea. And like put it out there, publish it on forums, publish it in groups. And people are like, yeah, it's cool. But like, no, I don't want to pay for this. Like I would never pay for something like this. Cloud Campaign is very different. Like the first day I put it up, a lot of people started signing up saying like, this is great. Like I want to get first access to it. I want to start paying for it. And so my thought was like, okay, like this has legs. Like let me start focusing on this. And like, I'll spend 6 to 9 months working on it. And if it doesn't work out, then I'll figure out something else. But like, let me just try this because I don't have a mortgage. I don't have kids. Like there's very little responsibility for me right now. And if I don't do this now, I'm probably never going to do it. So let me just try this.
And you had the cash from the severance. So you had a little cash there. Where were you? Like in a little apartment with your girlfriend, or were you still living at home? Where were you?
Yeah. So I was in San Francisco in an apartment with my girlfriend. Okay. Yeah, we were in like a 2-bedroom apartment in like Nob Hill, Russian Hill area.
And she was working, so you had some cash from her, and then plus you had your severance. So you had a little room here to breathe and get this thing. Okay, great. I think that's important. A lot of times our listeners, at least for this show, a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs, they're always like, well, how'd you do that? How did you manage your personal cash? Well, you got that going. So it's good to know. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I'd saved up a decent amount of cash. So like at that point, I had enough for a down payment for a condo. And so I was thinking like, do I use this money that I've saved up and go buy a condo and go get a cushy job at like Google or Facebook? Or do I just go for it and try and start this company and put my savings into the company, which is obviously way more risky.
Way more risky.
But it's worked out so far. So I'm not upset about it. One other
What'd your dad say? Was your dad like, yeah, go for it? Or was your dad like, no, buy the condo? Well, I was curious. What'd your folks say?
Oh, he was like, go for it. Yeah. He's like, you're so young. He's like, even if you fail and end up with $0, like you can earn that money back really quickly as a software engineer.
All right, cool. All right. How'd the co-founder come into this?
Yeah. So about a year into it, maybe a little bit less than that, I went on this like ski trip with some buddies, one of my friends that I grew up with, who went to college with Ross, who's my co-founder. And so on the ski trip, talking with Ross and, you know, learning more about his background. And he's like, yeah, like I'm also entrepreneurial. I started this video production company where we're selling commercials to Audi. I was like, wow, like that's crazy. Like that's a really big deal. Like you're selling a product that doesn't really exist, right? It's like just the dreams. Like this is what the commercial is going to look like. Here's a storyboard. And Audi's like, sure, here's 6 figures. And I was like, that's crazy. Like if you can do that, you could for sure sell software. I was like, it would be really easy for you. And so
he obviously had a dynamic kind of a sales personality, one of those guys. Okay.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. His background is sales and marketing. So it's perfect and complementary to my background. And apparently he was thinking the same things. Like I didn't really broach the conversation when we were on the trip of like, hey, do you want to work with me? I was just kind of thinking in the back of my mind, like, this guy could be a really good fit. Like, let me talk to my buddy TJ afterwards, like kind of vet him and make sure he would be a good fit before I actually offer anything. And then the next week after the trip, Ross calls me out of the blue and he's like, hey, so that thing you're working on, like, have you thought about having like a business partner or someone to work with? I was like, yeah, actually, that sounds great. Like, let's talk about it some more and like figure out what this is going to look like. And then spend the next month just kind of hashing out the details, making sure we're both aligned and like really wanting to do this thing together, have the same kind of goals for the business. And then, yeah, he flipped to San Francisco because he was living down in San Diego at the time and just kind of started the whole process.
Well, that's a little bit risky because you didn't really know him well, but you did have the reference from the person you grew up with. So that helps, but there was still some risk there, I guess, because, you know, you didn't know him well. He wasn't married at the time, single guy, all that. He could take some risks too.
Yeah. And I think that's important. Like, so I tried to bring on a co-founder previous to Ross, and we were just at different points in our life. He was a bit older. He had a mortgage. He was starting a family. He was married. And he just didn't have the same risk tolerance that I did. He was a bit more averse to it. And so we tried it for a couple of months and he's like, look, man, like this is cool, but I need to get paid. The other guy, you know.
Oh, so you actually kind of tested a previous co-founder. Did you actually give that guy a deal, or you were still just in the dating phase and nothing was on paper, the first guy?
Yeah, so we had a deal. Had a deal with, so we did like a very similar deal with the first guy as well as my actual like co-founder today, Ross. And luckily, like the first thing I did when starting the business is I brought on an advisor, someone that had started a couple companies in the past and had that experience. Otherwise, I totally would have messed this up. So like the advice of the advisor was, look, you don't know if this is going to work out. Like,
that's right.
Don't just give this guy founder shares. Like you have no idea whether you guys are going to be together in a year. So make him a contractor, structure this in a way where his compensation is dependent on hitting certain benchmarks, and like give him a little bit of equity up front just so he's getting compensated for his time.
Fully vested? You mean like a vesting schedule, or like here's 2% on day one?
No, so we had a vesting schedule.
Okay.
Yeah, so it was 4-year vesting, 1-year cliff, kind of just like standard vesting schedule in startup scene. And yeah, it was like, I don't remember the exact numbers. It was something like, all right, you're going to get like 1.5% equity just for like helping out. And then if we hit, 2,000 in MRR within 3 months, then you'll get an additional X number of points. And if we get 10,000, you'll get this many points. And so it was a kind of a way to hedge myself against like making sure this was the right co-founder. And ultimately what happened is we didn't hit our goals, but I was like, it's clear that we're on the right path and like this is going to work out. And we have alignment. I think we're working really well together. So like, here, I'm just going to give you like a decent chunk of equity now, because that's really the only point of the contract was to hedge against this not working out, which happened with the first person I tried to bring on as co-founder. So I was really lucky that we had that situation in place.
Was this advisor your dad or a family member, or who was this?
No, so his name is Taz Patel.
Okay.
He had worked at a couple of like early startups that got acquired by Yahoo, I think in the early 2000s, maybe like, yeah, I think it was early 2000s. So like he had been in the startup scene for a little while, had a couple of good exits. And then most recently he started his own company called Captivate, which is in San Mateo. It's like an influencer marketing platform. And they're successful. So yeah, I just leaned on him because he had that experience.
How'd you know him?
Just met him randomly. Yeah, so I was working in San Mateo at Mojave Networks at the time, and he was working at his own startup, Captivate. We both happened to adopt dogs in the same week, and we both didn't know what we were doing, and we're just like walking down the streets of San Mateo, taking our dogs on a walk. And it was like this funny story. Like my dog Benny, he just sees Marbles, which is Taz's dog, and just lays down. And Marbles is like a block and a half away, so it's like super far away. I'm like, no, like let's go. We're walking. Then he's like, no, and just like lays there and just hold tight, would not move. And Marvel, same thing, just like locked eyes with Benny from like a block and a half away and just starts pulling his owner or her owner towards Benny. And it's like this really awkward, like, block and a half. I'm like, oh, like, hey, like, I see you over there. I'll wait for you. And eventually they make it over to us. And like the dogs start playing. And I mentioned like, oh, like, I don't really know how this works, but like, this is my dog Benny. We just adopted him. And he's like, oh, no way. Like, this is my dog Marbles. We just adopted her. And started talking, and we're like, we should just meet at the park like a couple times a week because our dogs have way too much energy and it's terrible having them in the office if they're not tired. So like, let's just meet at lunch during the park and let the dogs run. And then started to like learn more about him. And I was like, wow, like this guy's super impressive. He has a great background. I should like get to know him better and invite him over for dinner and like start to build a relationship. And so that's like is really just serendipitous and happenstance of how I met him.
Awesome. Is he an investor?
He is not an investor, but he's a formal advisor.
Formal advisor. Okay.
And now, this is
this is a tip. This is a tip for some of the listeners. Now, a lot of folks, if they don't have an official board of directors yet, which you probably don't, they usually have an advisory board. Now, a lot of advisory board members in startups aren't paid because they're doing it out of the goodness of their heart, but sometimes they're on equity, some sort of small vesting schedule for equity to compensate them for their time. Is that similar to what you set up for your advisors?
It is. Yeah. So we have 3 advisors at this point. 2 of them are investors. One is not, but all of them have like some compensation equity wise. And it's like, I think it's 2-year vesting with like a 6-month cliff or something. That's what we configured.
Very similar to what we did for Riderflex. Great tip for the listeners. Yeah. A 2-year deal for advisory board members is a little more common. Great tip for people listening to the show. Another thing I wanted to just kind of highlight there, for the listeners, so many times I talk to aspiring entrepreneurs and they'll tell me, I have this friend and we started this business, or we have this idea and we're kind of getting going. And I'll say, do you have an operating agreement? Do you have a cap table set up? Do you have anything in place? Oh, no. Me and Johnny, I've known Johnny forever. He's a good friend. We don't need all that. Well, I'm just like, okay. Yeah. Great move on your part early on to have everything on paper. This is how it works. This is what the vesting schedule is. This is what happens if we don't like each other anymore and you want out. All of that needs to be lined out up front. I don't care how long you've known the person. I don't care if they're a childhood friend from kindergarten. Make sure you have all of that in place on paper before you sign somebody up as a co-founder or work them into any kind of equity deal. Right?
Yeah, that's so smart. I mean, that's great advice because everything's great while things are going well, but as soon as something goes wrong, or like even if something goes really well, right? Like if you exit and have some crazy outcome, people are greedy. People are just naturally greedy, and they're going to be like, "No, I thought you'd promise me 30%," and you're like, "Absolutely not." And it just ends up becoming this terrible mess. You lose a friend during the process. Like it's not worth it. Yeah, just have everything documented and signed ahead of time.
Yeah. So your second guy you tried though worked out well so far.
Yeah, it's been great. Yeah, so like we're still co-founders today, obviously, and things
Nice.
are working out really well, and our skill sets complement each other, which I think
Awesome.
was just so important, right? Like my background is more technical, more on the engineering product side. His background is more sales and marketing, so it
Perfect.
made it really clear in terms of like who owns what, and we weren't worried about stepping on each other's toes or like like overseeing each other's work or kind of conflicting in that sense. It was like, nope, I got product and engineering, you got sales and marketing.
Yes.
Let's go from there.
Another great piece of advice, if you're going to select co-founders, do your best to find somebody that complements your skill set. I mean, I have seen situations work where both co-founders are engineers and coders, and then immediately hire a salesperson or something. I mean, so it's not impossible, but boy, it really helps if your co-founders all have certain functions that, and certain expertise. So great move on your part for sure. Okay, so now's probably a good time to give us the cloud campaign elevator pitch.
Perfect.
Go for it. Tell the listeners cloud campaign, what it is today. Give us a nice overview.
Yeah, so Cloud Campaign is a digital platform that helps marketing agencies manage social media at scale. So think about your typical agency, they're managing, anywhere from 5 to let's say 30 clients, and they're managing their social media for them. It's
Mhm.
very difficult to do that without having the proper systems in place. And so Cloud Campaign is that platform that allows them to pretty much have everything they need from a social perspective under one roof. They have the client agency relationship and like all done through our system. So if you think about like approvals, right? Like a lot of agencies need to get their content approved before they can publish it on the client's behalf. And so we handle that entire aspect of it. Also
Okay.
reporting, like at the end of the month, agencies need to send reports to their clients. We have
Mm,
white labeled
mm.
reports that they can send that has all their branding on it. It looks very professional. The agency can just generate that with a single click and send it to the client.
Ooh, okay. And does it also help being logged in and passwords and all these different, I mean, instead of like, okay, I got 80 accounts, all 80 of them need a Facebook post today. And so I'm
Mhm.
gonna try to navigate through re-signing in and out. Does it help with that too, or no?
It does, yeah. So the agency just needs to link up the account once using OAuth, and then we handle all the authentication from there on out. And so they
Mhm.
never have to really, they never have to go to the platforms again. So if they don't want to go into Facebook, they don't want to go on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, Google My Business, like all of those platforms, we integrate directly with, and they can publish directly from our platform to those.
Ooh, nice. Okay. Now, is this also a replacement of their CRM or replacement of Salesforce? Do they use this to manage account relations as well, or no?
Not yet. So that's coming very, very soon. So we just raised the Series A round in May
Okay.
of 2021.
Okay.
And the main focus of that funding is to build out more of an operating system for marketing agencies where we will help them, manage all their clients, send proposals to new prospects, invoice their clients, and actually get
Mm,
paid at the end of the month.
mm,
So
mm,
that's really
mm.
where we're going in the next kind of 12 to 18 months here.
Okay. Was that a vision early on, or you've just worked that in and made some pivots and changes as you've kind of moved along here?
Yeah, so that's kind of been worked in over the past couple of years here. It wasn't initially the vision. The vision initially was, hey, social media space needs to be fixed. Like it needs some disruption for agencies because a lot of them are using kind of direct to brand solutions like let's say Hootsuite or Sprout Social or
Mhm.
Sprinkler
Right.
that don't
Right.
really scale well for multi-brand management. And so that was the initial idea. And kind of through that process and working with some of our advisors, they were pointing out this bigger opportunity. They're like, hey, the
Of
marketing
course.
agency space, yeah, that's their job, right? Like, how do you build $1 billion business? And they were pointing out that the marketing agency space isn't really well defined or like owned by any particular brand. It's really fragmented. And
Mm,
there needs to be some sort of brand that comes in and just builds the entire operating system for agencies, like almost similar to
mm.
Shopify, right? If you want to go and start an online store, you go to Shopify and they can get your e-commerce store spun up within 20 minutes. You can, host your store, you can put all your products online. They have partners to help with fulfillment. They help you with marketing. I was like, why doesn't that exist for marketing agencies? Like, we already have a really good foothold in the market with our social media management tool. Like, why don't we just solve all these other issues? So this kind of happened a couple of years ago, and so we've been building towards now, like having enough capital to hire the engineers to start to build out these other products.
So right now, I have several marketing agency friends that have been on the podcast, and I haven't even thought about asking them like, "What's your operating system?" We haven't even talked about it. I'm just curious what they're using. What's common? What are agencies using right now? Word, Microsoft Word and spreadsheets, or what are they using?
A lot of them, yes. Yeah, it's crazy. Like a lot of it is just extremely fragmented and manual. So a lot of them are using QuickBooks for getting paid, or maybe they're using like just pure ACH and going to their bank directly or collecting checks. So it's a fairly manual process. And then they're using, either spreadsheets to do prospecting, or maybe they're using like HubSpot if they're very sophisticated, but it's overkill for most agencies that are like small to medium sized.
Okay.
And then, for social media management specifically, if you think about social media management, like there's just so much data and so many processes that you're having to manage. If you have 5 clients, each client has 4 social accounts, each account needs 3 posts per week, or like, it's nearly impossible. And so like what we kind of see happening is a lot of these small agencies or freelancers typically break when they get to like 3 to 5 clients. That's kind of the breaking point where like they just can't do it anymore, and they start to like forget posts, or things fall through the cracks. And so what we see them doing today is they're on Hootsuite or some other like scheduler that's built for brands. They're using spreadsheets for getting posts approved. So they'll send like a spreadsheet to the client, like, hey, here's what your post's gonna look like. Just like write yes next to it if you approve. It's like, that's such a bad system. And then they'll have like some calendar apps, like maybe they're just using Google Calendar to like describe what the post is going to be each day, but then they have to go back to Hootsuite and actually like post it on that day. And so it ends up becoming this like super convoluted, messy system. And I think that's why we've had such success within the social media space so far, is because we just replace all of that and have it all under one roof.
I love the idea, and it's kind of the same for, Riderflex is a recruiting firm, right? And so we're a service business, just like a marketing agency. And a lot of our clients are very similar in nature of how the relationship works. We have the same problem as a startup, $1.5 million recruiting firm, kind of the same thing, right? Like we're using QuickBooks for the accounting. We're using HubSpot a little bit for client management. We're using spreadsheets for this. We're using Google Drive to keep stuff, and it's a little fragmented and scattered. But it's interesting when I think, because I get sales calls all the time as a CEO for Riderflex, right? I mean, people are always trying to sell me something.
Yep.
And they'll call, and when I think of when somebody's trying to pitch me an operating system or some sort of software platform, my immediate thought as a startup CEO is, I don't have the money for that, and I don't have time. Like I don't need another expense on my income statement, and I don't have time to talk about that anyway. Is that the roadblock you get when you're trying to pitch this and have a conversation with agency CEOs? I'm just curious what they say when you're hitting them.
Yeah, I mean, we've been fortunate that we've grown sales to date just via inbound. So
really,
I mean, we're advertising. So we're running ads on Facebook and Instagram saying,
okay,
hey, here's our product. Click here to schedule a demo with our sales team. So all of the leads that are coming to our sales team are already SQLs. They're inbound. They're very high intent. They're ready to purchase.
I see.
So like we have tried outbound very early on, and we ran into that issue where folks are like, I don't have time to switch. I'm not interested in switching. I don't have a budget for this. Now, because it's all inbound, they've already experienced the pain point. They understand the problem that we're solving. And they're like, yes, I'm at that point where I'm managing 3 to 5 clients manually or using some other solution that's in the market. And I can't get beyond this point. I can't add more clients because there's just too many things that are in the air, and I'm not going to remember to do everything. So I need some sort of system that's going to put this all into order for me. And it's a really quick sales process. So like it's typically 30 minutes. It's a quick 30-minute demo. About 75% of folks that go through the demo actually skip the free trial and put in their credit card and pay by the end of it.
How did you get the cash to do the ads to get the inbound?
It's a good question. I mean, so initially I had put in $17,000 of my own savings into the company, and then my co-founder Ross put in 10,000. So we had about 27 grand to test and iterate, which like today, that's not even what we spend on advertising in 1 month. We spend like double that. But back then that was a lot. That was a lot of money that we could run small experiments with. So we're, spending $100, $200 on Facebook ads, Google ads, YouTube ads to see like what sticks. Can we get one customer? Can we get one person that's interested? And so we just ran a ton of experiments over about 9 months until we finally found one that actually worked. And we were generating leads at the time. I think it was like $10, $15 of leads saying like, yes, I want a demo. I'm very interested. And then we started to scale from there. So like instead of spending $200 on that one campaign, we're like, okay, this seems to be working. Let's try $500 this month. Okay, that worked. Let's try $1,000 this month. So we're pretty frugal and ramped it up pretty slowly.
Who had expertise at that, spending money on pay-per-click or keywords for Google or Facebook ads? Like, you guys just kind of learning on the fly?
Pretty much learning on the fly. So I was fortunate that my girlfriend was working at Facebook at the time. So she had some helpful connections. There were like two account managers that were managing very large ad budgets for their clients at Facebook. And so she made the connection to them, and they helped us kind of ideate different campaigns that we should try and iterate on it and get to a place where it's actually producing results.
What was more fruitful for you right away? The Google pay-per-click or Facebook ads? Do you know?
Facebook. During that initial 9 months, we only got one client ever from Google PPC.
Okay. I just did an interview with the CEO from Obvi, OBVI. It's a women's collagen product deal. And they took the revenue from 178,000 to 5 million. And I asked him how he did it. Wow. And he said Facebook ads. I was like, okay, bro, teach me how to do that.
Yeah, I mean, the targeting is just so specific. And like, we'll see if that changes with the iOS 14 update where you can't track users across other apps. That's going to be really interesting to see. But to date, like Facebook has so much data on you and everyone else that uses the platform that you can get very, very specific with your targeting. And if you figure out, like, it's really two things. Like one, I'll say three things. One, like, what's your targeting? Who are you getting in front of? If you figure that out, then the next thing is, what is that carrot? Like, what's going to get them to take action while they're, probably sitting on the couch, aimlessly scrolling Facebook, Instagram, whatever, while watching TV? What's going to get them to be like, oh, I need to like take action on this right now? And if you figure out what that carrot is, then the next step is, what is kind of the objective, or like, how are you going to actually get their information so you can get them to purchase? Maybe it's sending them to your website so they'll go and fill out the sign up form and actually start paying and put their credit card. Maybe it's just getting their contact information so you can call them the next day during business hours when they're actually in the right mindset and ready to purchase, and then run them through a demo. So like, that's what we do. So we found the right targeting. The next step is the carrot. We offer free white labeling. That's really valuable to an agency. It's something that we'd used to charge $400 for. We now offer it for free as the carrot for our ad. Hey, respond to this ad, schedule a demo with our team, and if you go through the demo, we'll give you free white labeling. And that's been really, really compelling. Folks like see the ad and they don't want to miss it. They don't want to miss like the offer, so they'll respond to it right away. We just collect their contact information at that point. And then the following day during business hours, we'll call them and say, hey, you responded to our ad last night. I saw that you wanted a demo. We're offering this free white labeling promo. Do you have time later today or tomorrow to run through a quick 30-minute demo? And that's been really successful for us.
Gotcha. Congratulations on that. How big is the company now? How many employees, and do you want to speak to revenue? Sometimes, I don't know how much you want to share there, but give us a general idea of how big the company is.
Yeah, happy to. I mean, so we're about 25, 26 employees at this point. We just raised our Series A, so we've about doubled in the past 2 months, which has been crazy.
Great. Great.
From a revenue perspective, we're at 2 million in ARR, annual recurring revenue, and we're pushing 3 million this year. So we tripled the past 2 years. The goal is to triple revenue again this year and end at about 3.6 million ARR. And then, the goal hopefully is to triple again next year and end at just over 10 million.
Congratulations. What was the Series A? How much was that?
We raised 5 million.
5 million. Okay. Now that was your first big raise, right? For you. I mean, that was quite an experience, I'm sure.
Yeah. I mean, we'd raised 1.5 million, a seed round, like a very small seed round back in January of 2020.
Okay.
And I think that really laid the groundwork for our Series A, because all of the investors that we were talking to during the seed round ended up then coming in the Series A. And there's one investor that kind of got knocked out of the seed round. They just weren't moving quick enough and we didn't have room for them. And so when we went to go raise the Series A, like at least starting initial conversations, they reached out and said, hey, like we want the opportunity to lead this. We will run the process in the background. It's not going to take much of your time and effort. Like, are you okay with that? And of course we're like, sure, sounds great.
Yes.
Yeah. We weren't gonna start the process for 3 months. So like if you're able to get us a term sheet by then it makes it easy. I'm like, let's just do that. And so that's what we ended up doing, is raising from Oregon Venture Fund and Access Venture Partners kind of co-led the Series A.
Did those relationships come from the accelerator when you moved to Boulder? Is that how that happened?
One of them did. So Access Venture Partners, we got connected with them through a local angel investor, Eric Kirby. So through the accelerator program, we met Eric. Eric is an LP in a handful of different funds that are here in Colorado. And so he was able to make those intros pretty early on. And we started conversations like during our angel rounds. Like we started talking to all the VC firms around here during angel round. Obviously, it wasn't fit for any of them because they're like, no, like we don't invest in angel rounds. You don't have anything to prove for it. But it at least built the relationships with the partners. So when we went to go raise the seed round and Series A, we'd already known them for a couple of years at this point. They were getting our monthly investor updates. They felt like really comfortable with the business and saw the trajectory for a while. And so it made the whole process of raising those subsequent rounds really, really quick. And like, I'm not going to say easy, but like easier than it would be if we just like started a process from scratch.
Do you hate the whole pitch and raise and conversations and doing all that? Or do you like it? Is it a pain in the ass?
There's parts that are fun. Like it's a really good exercise. And so just for context, we were bootstrapped for 2 years and then we decided to go the VC route and start raising money because we saw there was a bigger opportunity, and with the capital, we could actually capitalize on it. But, I'd say even if you are bootstrapping and like you don't intend on raising money, it's helpful to go through the exercise of raising money because you're having really smart minds look at your business and analyze your business. They've looked at hundreds of other startups that, hopefully they have a clear idea of like what turns into successful business and what doesn't. And yeah, just going through the process of like gathering all that data, really understanding your business better than anyone else, refining your story and your vision and your mission and what you're building for the company. Like that exercise is invaluable. And so I'd say that part of fundraising is really fun and enjoyable for me. The actual process of the back and forth and managing emails and getting all the due diligence documents to the VC firm, like that part is extremely time consuming and it's very repetitive. Like if you're talking to a handful of different firms that are all going through diligence at the same time, you're having to like send all the same documents, have all the same conversations with however many different partners, and you're like, can't you just like look at this data room that I put together and just figure it out on your own? No, a lot of times you have to walk them through like what's in the data room, answer like questions that seem a little bit silly in the moment. And so, yeah, that part's pretty frustrating.
Are you guys still in control? You and your co-founder, do you together, are you in control of the business or did you have to give up control with the Series A?
So we did give up control during the Series A. Common shareholders at this point own 47% of the business, although it's worth noting that we have an 11% option pool for employees. And so if you distribute that evenly across all shareholders, then we're just over 50%. So yeah, I think technically from a voting right perspective, we are still in control because of that 11% swing. But from like a board perspective, we are not in control anymore. So our board is 5 board members, including me and my co-founder, 2 independents, and then 1 VC. Luckily, we're all on the same page so far. I'm sure there'll be a situation where we're not and we have to vote. But it's been fairly easy so far. And like that's one thing we've been really thoughtful of is anytime we bring on a new investor, bring on a new board member, really making clear like, hey, this is our vision and this is where we see the company going over the next 4 years. Are you bought in on that, or do you see a different vision? If you see a different vision, then like we probably shouldn't work together and we're going to go find someone else to take money from.
So technically, if things went south, they could vote to remove you as the CEO, but right now the relationship is good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think I'm
Was
like,
that, yeah, sorry.
oh,
Was that scary? Was that scary to know that you were taking that money and that now you're moving into a little different, type of environment where they can kind of tell you what to do, but even though they don't, but they could. Was that a little scary for you?
yes and no. I mean, just the thought of it, right, is a little bit scary, but knowing who we have on our board and who our investors are, it's not scary. Like
Okay,
I really trust our board. I really trust our investors. I think they really do believe in the vision that we're pitching and think that we can accomplish it, and we have the right team in place.
good,
So
good.
not worried today. I mean, I think it's fairly common though as startups grow that the founder and CEO is maybe not the
Yeah.
CEO that takes the company public. Like it could be someone different, and I'm
Mhm.
pretty well aware of that. I'm not that naive. So like,
Yeah.
yeah, I think there might be a point where we cross that bridge where, they're like, hey, you either need to grow 10 times quicker than the company, or we need to bring in someone that's 10 years older and has done this before. We'll see when
Yeah.
that time
Yeah.
comes.
Gotcha. Who's your primary competition?
I would say Sendable is probably our primary competition. They're based out of the UK. They're also focused on marketing agencies and social media management. They just got acquired earlier this year, and they got rolled up into a PE firm. So it'll be interesting to see what happens to their product, because I think a lot of us have seen that play out. And a lot of times PE firms are just very focused on profit and how do I build this business and make this profitable as possible, and then flip it and resell in a few years. And typically for a customer, that's not a great experience because they're focused on how do I reduce COGS, right? Like customer success, that's a COG. How do you reduce that? How do you make it just as profitable as possible, squeeze out all the money? And for customers, it's typically, they're the ones that are feeling the biggest impact of that because they're not receiving the support they should receive. The product's not getting updated as quickly as it should get updated.
What's your plan? Is this well, of course, I guess if it was a lifestyle business for you and your co-founder, that changed when you closed the Series A.
Yeah.
So now it's obviously grow it and maybe take it public or get acquired, obviously is the goal now, right? I'm assuming.
Exactly. Yeah. So we have like a 4 to 5 year plan to get to a place where we could go public. Again, the focus is triple revenue the next 2 years. So go from 3 to 10 million, then 10 to 30 million, which will be a very large leap, and then double. So from 30 to 60 and 60 to north of 100. And at that point, that's kind of the benchmark to go public in the US. And so,
Okay.
yeah, hoping we can get to the point where we do have the option of going public in 4 to 5 years.
For the listeners, by the way, cloudcampaign.io, and your product is not only for marketing agencies, but also for freelancers. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah. About 15% of our revenue is from freelancers.
Okay, very good. Because as a freelancer, I would think managing multiple accounts is when you don't have any employees to delegate to and it's only you, I would think that's difficult and your product comes in super handy, I would think.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I mean, you can automate just a lot of the tedious tasks that go into social media management and hopefully free up your time as a freelancer to go find more clients, right? Like ultimately what we want is to allow you to onboard more clients without necessarily having to hire a staff. We have, I mean, this is like definitely an anomaly, but we have one freelancer that's using the platform today that has 125 clients that they're managing as a single person, single freelancer, no team, no consultants.
Okay, I don't even know how they're doing that, but yeah, all right.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, they've taken the approach of like a hybrid model where they are using our platform, they give the client access to our platform, and then they create all the content for the client. And so they verticalize and focus on a particular niche. So like, let's just say, for example, you only work with martial arts studios, right? The content that all these martial arts studios are posting in social media is pretty similar. And so they're able to create content that is usable and extensible for all of their clients, put it into their workspaces within Cloud Campaign, and then give the client access to that workspace. And that just makes it so scalable where a single person, again, can manage over 100 clients because the client is the one that's actually going and like checking the content, making changes if necessary.
Okay.
But the agency is putting all the content into the client workspace for them.
I like it. Okay, I like it. I know we're almost out of time. I'm going to ask you 2 wrap-up questions real quick. Is that okay? I know we got to.
Totally. Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. All right, great. By the way, you are super well-spoken, very polished professional for your age. Just want to compliment you there. I interview lots of people, not only on the podcast, but we're a recruiting firm, right? So I'm interviewing people for a living, right?
Right.
And you're super well, you just put together really well. I can see why investors would be comfortable, giving you money, you and your co-founder money to operate. You're impressive young man. So compliments to your parents and all the rest of your mentors and advisors when you were growing up.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So part of the accelerator program was personal development, and they brought in a public speaking coach over the past, like the kind of final 3 weeks of the program, because the culmination of the program was actually a demo day. And I think that helped me immensely. Just repetition, going through the process of public speaking and word choice and trying to remove filler words and those types of things, I think really benefited me.
Speaking of filler words, so people your age, when I interview them, sometimes I stick count how many times they say the word like.
Yep.
They use like before they start every sentence. Like that's the first word of the sentence. And sometimes I'll interview people and think to myself, okay, this is driving me nuts. And you are somebody's coached you on that, or you've just trained yourself not to do that, because many people your age do that way too much. You don't do that. The other thing that you got going for you too is you're also very humble. You have a humble but confident approach where I feel comfortable giving you my money because you seem pretty confident and stable, but you're also humble enough to listen and take feedback and coaching and learn. And I think that's a huge asset. So compliments there to you for that.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. 2 final questions. You're learning it so much at this age as an entrepreneur, and now as a CEO with 25 employees. I mean, you're learning something every day, right? Every day.
Yep.
Like, wow. Okay. What would you want to share 1 or 2 pieces of advice? And I know we could do a whole podcast on it, but do you just want to share quickly 1 or 2 pieces of advice for aspiring entrepreneurs, maybe a couple of buddies out there looking to be co-founders and start something, but they haven't? Anything you want to share with them?
Yeah, trying to boil it down to 1 or 2 pieces of advice. Like
I
you said, it
know,
could
right?
be an entire podcast.
Yeah.
Let's see. So, I think when you're starting a company, and like, especially if you have a co-founder, thinking through what you want the company to become, right? And like what type of outcome you want. I think it's really easy to just fall into the trap of, I want to start a company. I'll figure out like what a good outcome is for me later, or really what I want out of this. And I think a lot of folks have the mistake of going and raising VC money too early, where they're like, oh, this is just the path that you have to go down. You have to go and start a company. You have to have an idea. Then go find a VC that's going to back you. You raise money, and then the rest is history. You start to build your team, and et cetera, et cetera. No, like that's probably not the right path. Like you should decide, can this actually become $1 billion business? Like, can this return VC type returns? And is that the outcome I want for myself? Like, do I actually want to become a CEO of a public company or spend the next 10 years of my life doing this? If the answer is no, then don't raise VC money. Like, that's going to put you on a very specific path. And so being really deliberate about how you're building the company and what you want the outcome to be. And there's a lot of other vehicles of raising capital that aren't venture capital, right? Like you can go get debt financing. Like Clearbank is a good example that does this, where you can go, if you have some revenue, you can go and get like a cash advance type thing. You take debt on the balance sheet, you then pay them back as you generate more revenue. It's a good way to get capital to grow a bit quicker without having to dilute yourself, and also like have these expectations that you're building $1 billion business one day. And I think most companies, most ideas, most markets like don't really warrant VC money. It's not like a big enough opportunity where
Right.
you can actually have a return that's sizable for investors.
Mhm.
So to kind of summarize it, I'd say like really sit down with your co-founder, or if it's just you, sit down and write down a piece of paper, like, what do I want to be doing in 5 years? What type of business do I want to build? Am I just looking for profit and like, a better lifestyle? If
Right.
so, don't take VC money, because like you're gonna be working crazy hours. You're not gonna have like a chill 20-hour week if you're gonna go and raise VC money and build a large
That's right.
business.
Yeah, great point. How about this young CEO? I mean, you're learning a little bit on the fly here how to manage teams, right? Like you've never managed a team of 25 people before. So
Right.
every single day is new for you. Any advice for young first-time CEOs based on what you've learned so far?
Yeah, I would say there's two things. So like one, just enter every situation with a learner's mindset. It's really helpful if you understand that you don't know everything, right? Like if you can come to terms with that and enter every situation with, hey, I have this one data point from my experience, or I have my opinion even, right? And like that's a data point, but let me go and pull the network. Let me talk to my employees. Let me understand like what their data points are. And then you're the one that's ultimately making the decision, but you should be hopefully getting more data points so you can make a more informed decision, and just putting smart people around you if possible. So finding advisors that have done this before so you can ask them those questions and get those data points. Building a board of, like our board is mostly operators, previous operators that have ran their own companies. And so
Good.
that's really helpful as well. So I'd say like that's the first piece of advice is just really having a learner's mindset. And I think the second piece of advice is similar, which is like hiring folks that know what they're doing, that you can really trust and they can just run with it autonomously. So our like mid-level management, most of them are way more experienced than I am. They understand whatever department it is that they're running significantly better than I do. And so my goal is to just not get in their way, right? Like I hire someone that has 25 years of sales and customer success experience. They know better than I do. I should not be the one that's like telling them how to do their job. My goal is making sure they have the resources to do their job effectively, making sure they have the right team members, blocking them or unblocking them if they're blocked anywhere. But outside of that, like I have complete trust in our mid-level management. And so I kind of just let them run and just make sure, again, like, okay, where's the next area that we need more people? Where's the next area that folks are blocked? Can I try and solve that problem and then hire someone to like take over and build a process out of it?
Great advice. Ryan, thank you so much for sharing your story and being on the Riderflex podcast. I really appreciate that.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, this is a lot of fun.
Congratulations on everything you're doing, man. You guys are off to the races.
Sounds good. Yeah, let's stay in touch. This is a good time.